What if I told you some of history's most pivotal moments, events that shaped civilizations, toppled empires, and altered the course of humanity remain shrouded in complete mystery? No matter how many experts dig through ancient records or analyze crumbling artifacts, these enigmas refuse to surrender their secrets. Picture this: a thriving city, home to thousands, vanishes overnight without a trace. A legendary civilization leaves behind monuments so advanced, modern engineers still debate how they were built. Or imagine an entire army marching confidently into the unknown, only to disappear from history's pages as if swallowed by the earth itself. These aren't plot twists from a fantasy novel, they're real, unresolved chapters of our past waiting for answers. That's the spine-tingling allure of historical mysteries. They remind us that even in an age of satellites and supercomputers, there are stories so strange, so stubbornly unexplained, they defy logic. Who were the masterminds behind these events? Were they acts of genius, coincidence, or something far more otherworldly? Every detail we uncover only deepens the intrigue, pulling us deeper into the rabbit hole. And today, we're diving headfirst into 25 of the most baffling historical events ever recorded, cases where the truth remains just out of reach, teasing us with fragments of evidence that raise more questions than answers. From vanished explorers to cryptic ancient technologies, each of these mysteries is a puzzle missing critical pieces. Some have haunted historians for centuries, others are recent enough that witnesses still remember the chilling uncertainty firsthand. But one thing connects them all: they challenge our understanding of what's possible. So if you've ever felt that thrill of stumbling upon a secret the world forgot, or wondered what really happened when history's cameras stopped rolling, you're in the right place. Strap in, we're about to journey through time, dust off the archives, and confront the whispers of the past that refuse to stay silent. The only question is, are you ready to question everything you thought you knew? In the late 16th century, a group of English settlers arrived on the shores of what is now North Carolina, full of hope as they established the Roanoke Colony. Yet just 3 years later, when a supply ship finally returned, the entire settlement had vanished, not just the people, but every structure, every trace of their existence. All that remained was a single word carved into a wooden post: Croatoan. This eerie clue launched one of history's most enduring puzzles. Were the colonists massacred? Did they attempt to flee by sea and perish in the waves? The most compelling theory suggests they may have integrated with the nearby Croatoan tribe, a possibility supported by later reports of European features among some Native Americans in the region. But then why leave behind no definitive evidence? Even stranger are the accounts from local tribes describing sudden encounters with pale-skinned strangers speaking an unfamiliar language, sightings that only deepened the enigma. Some whisper of supernatural forces at play, pointing to the colony's precarious timing during a period of intense celestial events and unexplained weather phenomena. Could the settlers have stumbled into something beyond human understanding? Despite centuries of research, no single theory has ever been proven. The lost colony of Roanoke endures as a ghost story written in history's margins, a reminder that even in an age of exploration, the unknown could still swallow entire communities without a trace. Among the world's most tantalizing unsolved puzzles sits the Voynich Manuscript, a book so perplexing that even the brightest cryptographers and linguists have thrown up their hands in defeat for over 600 years. Discovered in 1912 by rare book dealer Wilfred Voynich, this enigmatic 15th-century text is filled with looping, alien handwriting no one has ever deciphered, paired with baffling illustrations of unknown plants, naked women bathing in green liquid, and celestial charts featuring constellations that don't match any known astronomy. Carbon dating confirms its medieval origins, but its contents refuse to surrender meaning. Some pages burst with botanical drawings of species unrecognizable to modern science. Others show intricate networks of tubes and vessels resembling biological diagrams or perhaps alchemical blueprints. The text itself flows in a script that follows linguistic patterns yet defies translation, leading experts to debate whether it's an elaborate cipher, a lost language, or even an ingenious hoax. Renowned codebreakers, including World War II cryptanalysts who cracked Nazi ciphers, have attempted to unravel the Voynich without success. Early theories suggested it might be the work of 13th-century scholar Roger Bacon, while others pointed to Elizabethan magus John Dee. More fringe interpretations propose extraterrestrial origins or a secret alchemical treatise meant only for initiated eyes. One especially compelling hypothesis argues the manuscript was crafted by an unknown woman herbalist, pointing to the illustration's focus on female bodies and healing plants, an unconventional perspective for medieval scholarship. But then, why cloak it in indecipherable script? Others believe it's a sophisticated nonsense text created to dupe a wealthy patron, though the painstaking detail in its 240 pages makes this theory hard to swallow. Perhaps eeriest of all is how the manuscript structure mirrors genuine scientific manuals of its era, complete with thematic sections on herbs, astronomy, and medicine, yet every concrete detail dissolves into ambiguity. Even artificial intelligence, our modern oracle for cracking ancient codes, has failed to find consistent patterns in its symbols. The Voynich Manuscript mocks our hunger for answers, standing as a testament to history's ability to guard its secrets jealously. With each failed decoding attempt, it whispers a haunting question. What if some mysteries are never meant to be solved? On a quiet June morning in 1908, something unimaginable tore through the skies above Siberia with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs. The explosion that followed, now known as the Tunguska Event, unleashed devastation so immense it flattened 800 square miles of dense forest, snapping trees like matchsticks and sending shockwaves that circled the globe twice. Yet when scientists finally reached the remote blast site 19 years later, they found no crater, no fragments of a meteorite, nothing to explain the cataclysm. It was as if the universe itself had struck a match and vanished. Eyewitnesses described a fireball brighter than the sun streaking across the horizon before a series of deafening booms shook the earth. The blast was so powerful it knocked people off their feet hundreds of miles away and lit up the night sky as far as London, so vividly that some thought dawn had come early. But what could create such destruction without leaving a trace? The leading theory suggests a meteor or comet fragment exploded in midair, vaporizing before impact. Yet no significant debris has ever been recovered, fueling alternative explanations. Some researchers propose a rogue pocket of natural gas ignited in the atmosphere, while others point to exotic possibilities like a microscopic black hole passing through Earth or even the catastrophic failure of an alien spacecraft. Perhaps most unsettling is how narrowly humanity avoided annihilation. Had the explosion occurred just 4 hours later, it would have obliterated St. Petersburg, wiping out millions. Instead, it detonated over one of the most isolated regions on Earth, sparing lives but deepening the mystery. Even today, the Tunguska Event stands as a humbling reminder of our planet's vulnerability and the unnerving truth that some forces in the cosmos remain beyond our comprehension. Was it a cosmic fluke or a warning shot from the universe? The silence of the Siberian taiga offers no answers. The summer of 1518 in Strasbourg began like any other, until one woman stepped into the street and began to dance. Not the joyful steps of celebration, but a frenzied, uncontrollable jerking that gripped her body like a puppet on invisible strings. Within days, dozens more joined her, then hundreds, their limbs flailing in relentless, exhausting motion as if cursed by some unseen force. This was the dancing plague, a real-life nightmare where people danced until their feet bled, some collapsing from sheer exhaustion, even death. What could drive an entire town to such madness? Some historians point to ergot poisoning, a toxic fungus that grows on damp rye and can cause hallucinations and muscle spasms. Others argue for mass psychogenic illness, a wave of shared psychological trauma in a population already battered by famine, disease, and relentless hardship. Imagine the desperation of peasants who'd survived years of crop failures and plagues, their bodies and minds pushed to the brink. Could collective stress have manifested in this grotesque, unstoppable dance? Yet the sheer scale of the event defies simple explanation. Contemporary accounts describe entire streets packed with twitching, moaning figures, their movements so violent that authorities built wooden stages to contain them, believing the dancers might expel the fever through motion. Priests blamed demonic possession, physicians prescribed bloodletting, but nothing stopped the dance for nearly 2 months, and then, as suddenly as it began, the plague faded. The survivors were left with torn feet, haunted eyes, and no answers. No disease, no toxin, no sermon could fully account for why Strasbourg streets became a theater of involuntary motion. Was it biology, psychology, or something lost to history? The dancing plague remains a chilling reminder of how fragile the human mind can be and how easily reality can unravel when fear takes the lead. Buried beneath the waves for 2,000 years off the coast of a tiny Greek island, a corroded lump of bronze and wood lay waiting to rewrite history. When sponge divers stumbled upon it in 1901, they had no idea they just recovered the world's first analog computer, a device so advanced it would take modern scientists over a century to unravel its secrets. Known as the Antikythera Mechanism, this intricate clockwork relic, no larger than a shoebox, contains a labyrinth of interlocking gears that model the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with staggering precision. The craftsmanship is mind-bending. Tiny, hand-cut gear teeth, some as thin as a millimeter, mesh together to predict celestial events like eclipses years in advance. One dial even tracks the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. But here's what truly baffles historians. Technology this sophisticated shouldn't exist in the 1st century BC. Nothing remotely comparable appears again until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. So how did ancient Greeks engineer such a masterpiece? And why was this knowledge lost to time? Some scholars believe the mechanism emerged from the workshops of legendary inventors like Archimedes or Hipparchus, whose lost writings hinted at mechanical models of the cosmos. Others suggest it was a teaching tool for elite students, blending astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy into a single bronze marvel. But the most haunting question isn't just how it worked, it's why this spark of technological brilliance flickered out. Was the mechanism a lone prototype destroyed when Rome conquered Greece, or did the knowledge survive in secret, passed down through generations of craftsmen before vanishing into history's shadows? Even today, as high-resolution scans reveal hidden inscriptions and previously unknown functions, the Antikythera Mechanism refuses to give up all its secrets. It stands as both a triumph of human genius and a sobering reminder that progress isn't always linear. Civilizations rise, fall, and sometimes take their greatest innovations with them, leaving behind fragments that taunt us with glimpses of what might have been. In the quiet desert town of Taos, New Mexico, an unsettling phenomenon has plagued residents for decades, a persistent, low-frequency hum that seems to emanate from nowhere. First reported in the early 1990s, the Taos hum isn't just background noise. It's an intrusive vibration that creeps into homes, rattles windows, and lingers in the skulls of those who hear it. Some describe it as a distant diesel engine idling, others as an electrical buzz just beyond perception. But the strangest part, only about 2% of the local population can detect it at all. Scientists who descended on Taos in the 90s were met with frustration. Microphones picked up nothing unusual, and seismic monitors detected no hidden geological activity. Yet dozens of townspeople insisted the hum was real, reporting symptoms ranging from sleeplessness to full-body vibrations. researchers quickly ruled out obvious culprits: power lines, underground pipelines, even secret military installations, yet the hum persisted. Some experts proposed it might be the result of spontaneous autocaustic emissions, where the human ear itself generates phantom sounds. Others pointed to infrasound, frequencies too low for most people to register, yet capable of causing physical discomfort. But Taos isn't alone. Similar mystery hums have cropped up worldwide, from Bristol, England to Windsor, Canada, each with the same eerie pattern: a select group of hearers tormented by a sound no instrument can capture. Could these cases share a common origin, some hidden global vibration? Or is the Taos hum something far more personal, a quirk of biology or psychology that rewrites our understanding of human perception? Even now, the hum drifts through the high desert air, a sonic ghost that refuses to be measured, dismissed, or explained. For those who hear it, the question isn't whether it exists, it's why the rest of us remain deaf to its call. On a quiet August night in 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up a signal so extraordinary that the astronomer reviewing the data scrawled, "Wow." In the margin of the printout, a stunned reaction that would give the phenomenon its name. Lasting exactly 72 seconds, this narrowband radio burst came from the constellation Sagittarius with a frequency that matched the predicted signature of an interstellar transmission. It was the kind of signal scientists had long theorized might come from an intelligent civilization, pulsing with a strength that dwarfed background cosmic noise. And then, just as suddenly as it arrived, it vanished, never to be heard again despite decades of frantic searching. The wow signal wasn't just powerful, it was precise. Broadcasting at 1420 MHz, it aligned eerily with the hydrogen line frequency, a universal marker astronomers had proposed as the most logical channel for extraterrestrial communication. The signal's intensity spiked and faded exactly as expected if it originated from a distant point in space, sweeping past Earth due to the planet's rotation. But when researchers rushed to confirm the finding using other telescopes, the cosmos offered only silence. Even today, no natural astrophysical phenomenon, no pulsar, no quasar, no passing comet has been found that can replicate the signal's unique characteristics. Some researchers cling to the possibility of a passing satellite or reflected human transmission, though no known technology of the era matched the signal's profile. Others whisper about intentional targeting. What if it was a brief, deliberate beacon meant to catch our attention, a cosmic hello before switching off? The most haunting theory suggests the signal might have been a fleeting burst from a dying civilization, their final shout into the void before vanishing forever. For all our listening, the universe hasn't repeated itself. Projects like SETI have scanned the same patch of sky thousands of times, deploying technology far more advanced than what detected the original signal, yet the silence persists. The wow signal remains a tantalizing one-night stand with the unknown, a whisper from the dark that dared us to believe, then left us wondering if we'd imagined it all along. In a cosmos brimming with natural radio chatter, this 72-second anomaly still stands apart, a lonely question mark hanging in the interstellar static. It began as a routine winter hike through the Ural Mountains, 9 experienced skiers, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, setting out into the snow-covered wilderness in January 1959. But when the group failed to check in as scheduled, rescuers embarked on a search that would uncover one of the most chilling mysteries of the 20th century. What they found at Dyatlov Pass defied all logic: a tent ripped open from the inside, footprints leading into sub-zero darkness, and eventually the bodies. Some showed signs of violent trauma, including crushed ribs and fractured skulls, yet with no external wounds. One victim was missing her tongue. Others had traces of radiation on their clothing. Most haunting of all, they'd fled their camp half-dressed in temperatures nearing -30 degrees Celsius, as though something had terrified them into certain death. Theories range from the plausible to the spine-tingling. Avalanche explanations suggest the group may have cut into a snow slab while pitching camp, triggering a cascade that forced them to slash their way out in panic. Yet weather reports from the time show no signs of significant snowfall, and the tent remained largely intact, unlikely if tons of snow had struck. Military testing whispers persist, fueled by reports of orange spheres spotted in the sky that night and the hikers' radiation readings. Declassified documents reveal the Soviet Union did conduct parachute mine tests in the region, potentially explaining the traumatic injuries. But why would an entire team flee barefoot into a blizzard instead of taking shelter? Then there's the folklore. Indigenous Mansi people had long spoken of malevolent spirits in those mountains, and some researchers point to infrasound, low-frequency waves generated by wind patterns that can induce irrational terror in humans. Could the group have been driven mad by an unseen natural force, or did they stumble upon something far more sinister, a secret experiment or encounter none were meant to witness? Even the official Soviet investigation, hastily closed just months later, left critical questions unanswered, labeling the cause as a compelling natural force. Decades later, modern technology has only deepened the enigma. Computer models suggest a rare katabatic wind could have struck without warning, creating hurricane-like gusts capable of flinging bodies into trees. But none of this explains the radiation, the missing tongue, or the eerie calm noted in the final photos the hikers took hours before disaster. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a forensic riddle wrapped in ice, a reminder that even in our modern age, nature or something else can still wield horrors beyond explanation. The morning of December 4, 1872, dawned clear over the Atlantic as the British brigantine Dei Gracia spotted a ship adrift near the Azores. As they drew closer, Captain David Morehouse recognized the vessel the Mary Celeste, a merchant brig that had left New York a month earlier, but something was wrong. The sails were loosely set, some torn, and the ship yawed unnaturally in the swell. Boarding the vessel, the crew of the Dei Gracia found an eerie scene. The Mary Celeste was completely seaworthy, her hold packed with 1,600 barrels of industrial alcohol, yet not a soul remained on board. The last log entry, dated 10 days prior, offered no clues. The crew's personal belongings lay untouched, even a sewing machine with fabric still threaded. A single lifeboat was missing, but there was no sign of struggle, no bloodstains, no evidence of panic. Just an abandoned ship drifting silently on an empty sea. What could make an entire crew vanish without a trace? The most obvious suspect was piracy, but nothing had been stolen, not the cargo, not the valuables in the captain's quarters. Mutiny seemed unlikely. Captain Benjamin Briggs was known as a fair and steady leader, and his crew included his own wife and toddler daughter. Natural disasters offered more plausible explanations. Perhaps a waterspout or sudden squall spooked the crew into abandoning ship prematurely, only for the Mary Celeste to survive unscathed while the lifeboat succumbed to the waves. Others pointed to the cargo. The alcohol could have leaked vapors, creating fears of an imminent explosion. In a panicked evacuation, the crew might have fled too hastily, underestimating the ship's sturdiness. But the mystery deepens when you examine the details. The ship's pumps were disassembled, suggesting the crew had been fighting a leak, yet no significant water damage was found. The chronometer and navigation tools were missing, strange omissions if this was a routine emergency. Some theorists propose more outlandish ideas: an attack by a giant squid, a sudden methane bubble from the ocean floor, even alien abduction. The truth is, none of these theories fully explain why experienced sailors would leave behind a perfectly sound vessel in mid-ocean, vanishing so completely that not a single body, not even a child's, was ever recovered. The Mary Celeste's legend only grew when subsequent owners reported the ship was cursed. meeting misfortune after misfortune until she was deliberately wrecked for insurance money in 1885. Even now, her name is shorthand for maritime enigmas, a floating riddle that refuses to surrender its secrets. Was it human error, a force of nature, or something far stranger that emptied her decks that day? The Atlantic keeps its silence, leaving us to wonder what horror, or simple misjudgment, could unravel the bonds of seamanship so completely. The ocean has swallowed better stories than this one, but few have clung so stubbornly to the shadows of the unknown. Buried in the basement of Baghdad's National Museum of Iraq lies a clay pot no bigger than a fist, one that could rewrite the history of technology. Discovered in 1936 near the ruins of a 2,000-year-old Parthian village, this unassuming artifact consists of a terracotta jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod, all sealed together with an asphalt plug. At first glance, it looks like a simple storage vessel, but when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig reassembled the pieces, he noticed something startling. The arrangement mirrored a basic galvanic cell, capable of generating an electric current when filled with an acidic solution like vinegar or wine. The implications were staggering. If Koenig was right, this Baghdad battery predated Alessandro Volta's invention of the modern battery by nearly 2 millennia. But what on earth would ancient people have needed electricity for? One compelling theory points to electroplating, the process of coating one metal with another using an electric charge. Artisans of the Parthian and later Sasanian empires were known for gilded silver objects so finely crafted that some appear to have been plated rather than hammered. Could these craftsmen have stumbled upon electrochemistry centuries before it was formally understood? Replicas of the Baghdad battery, filled with grape juice or citric acid, have produced just enough voltage to deposit thin layers of gold onto silver, lending credence to this astonishing possibility. Not everyone is convinced, of course. Skeptics argue the jar could have been a storage container for sacred scrolls, with the iron rod merely a stabilizing spindle. Others suggest the acidic residue inside might have come from decomposed organic materials rather than intentional use as a battery. But the asphalt seal poses an intriguing counterpoint. Why use such an airtight, corrosion-resistant material unless you are trying to contain a reactive substance? The mystery only deepens when you consider how knowledge of this technology might have vanished. Historical records from the region mention none of this, nor do they describe any practical applications of electricity. Was the Baghdad battery a lucky accident, a forgotten branch of science rediscovered centuries later, or does its existence hint at a broader, lost tradition of experimentation? With no definitive answers, the artifact remains a tantalizing what-if, proof that ancient minds may have grasped concepts we still assume were beyond their reach. Perhaps most humbling is the realization that our ancestors' ingenuity might have been far more sophisticated than we give them credit for. The Baghdad battery doesn't just challenge timelines, it whispers of entire chapters of human innovation that may have crumbled to dust, leaving behind only cryptic fragments for us to decipher. In the quiet gloom of that museum basement, a small clay pot continues to spark big questions about history, about progress, and about how much we still don't know. The Atlantic Ocean guards many secrets, but none have captured the world's imagination quite like the Bermuda Triangle, a stretch of water between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda where ships and planes seem to vanish without a trace. The legend began in earnest in 1945 when Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy bombers on a routine training mission, disappeared mid-flight. The pilot's final radio transmissions were laced with confusion, compasses spinning wildly, the horizon appearing distorted, and the unnerving declaration, "We are entering white water." Nothing seems right. A rescue plane sent to locate them also vanished, as if swallowed by the sea. But Flight 19 was far from the first. Decades earlier, the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy cargo ship carrying over 300 crew members, sailed into the Triangle in 1918 and never emerged. No distress call was ever heard, and not a single piece of wreckage was found. Scientists have spent decades dissecting these mysteries, offering explanations that range from the mundane to the extraordinary. One leading theory points to methane hydrates, huge pockets of gas trapped beneath the ocean floor that could erupt without warning, creating massive bubbles capable of sinking ships by reducing water density. Others highlight the triangle's notorious weather, where sudden microbursts and rogue waves can strike with little to no warning. Then there's the region's magnetic anomalies, which might disrupt navigation systems, sending pilots and sailors spiraling off course. These natural phenomena, taken together, paint a picture of a region where nature itself conspires to disorient and destroy. Yet for every logical explanation, there's a chilling counterpoint. Why do so many disappearances involve total communication blackouts, as if the victims were severed from reality in an instant? Why has so little wreckage ever been recovered, even from modern vessels equipped with emergency beacons? The more fringe theories lean into the supernatural alien abductions, time warps, or even the lost city of Atlantis unleashing ancient technology. Some point to the triangle's alignment with powerful ley lines or suggest it's a portal to another dimension, citing bizarre accounts from survivors who swear they saw skies turn metallic or experienced unexplained time lapses. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Bermuda Triangle isn't the disappearances themselves, but the way they expose our limits. In an age where satellites map every inch of the planet, this patch of ocean remains a stubborn blind spot, a reminder that nature can still defy our best tools and theories. Whether the truth lies in geology, human error, or something beyond our understanding, one thing is certain: the Bermuda Triangle isn't just a graveyard for ships and planes. It's a mirror reflecting back our deepest fears of the unknown, the uncontrollable, and the possibility that some mysteries refuse to be solved. The ocean keeps its secrets, and the Triangle's victims remain forever suspended between fact and folklore, their fates lost in the depths. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of Peru's arid Nazca Desert, a series of colossal figures etched into the earth have baffled researchers for centuries. These aren't simple scratches in the soil, they're intricate geoglyphs, some stretching over 1,200 feet long, depicting spiders, monkeys, hummingbirds, and geometric shapes so precise they seem drawn by a giant, steady hand. The Nazca Line's sheer scale is staggering. To appreciate their full form, you'd need to soar hundreds of feet above the desert floor. Yet radiocarbon dating reveals they were created between 500 BC and 500 CE, millennia before human flight. How did an ancient civilization achieve such pinpoint accuracy without ever seeing their work from above? And why dedicate generations to carving images only visible from the sky? One compelling theory suggests the Nazca people used simple tools and ingenious surveying techniques. By scaling up small designs with ropes and stakes, they could have mapped out the figures meticulously, perhaps using basic mathematics to maintain proportions. Experiments with teams replicating the lines using only period-appropriate tools support this idea. Once a path was cleared of dark surface stones to expose the lighter earth beneath, the contrast created lasting, visible markings. But the how might pale in comparison to the why. Some researchers propose the lines served as ceremonial pathways for rituals, with participants walking the figures as part of sacred processions. Others believe they functioned as an astronomical calendar, aligning with solstices or constellations to track planting cycles or predict rainfall in one of the driest regions on Earth. Yet the mystery deepens when you examine the glyph's diversity. Alongside the biomorphic figures, the desert is crisscrossed with straight lines running for miles, some converging at distant points like spokes on a wheel. Were these ancient roads trade routes or perhaps spiritual connections to distant mountains or water sources? Even more haunting are the theories linking the lines to water worship, a critical concern in the desert. Some animal figures, like the hummingbird, are associated with rain in local folklore, and underground aquifers have been found beneath certain glyphs. Could the Nazca have been marking hidden water sources or appealing to deities for life-giving rains? The most controversial interpretations stray into extraterrestrial territory, suggesting the lines were landing strips or signals for alien visitors. While this captures the imagination, it overlooks the Nazca's demonstrated ingenuity. Modern aerial photography reveals even more glyphs hidden by erosion, hinting at a vast, interconnected network still waiting to be decoded. Perhaps the truth lies in a blend of purposes: part sacred art, part celestial map, part communal project binding the culture together. What's undeniable is the Nazca line's enduring power to mystify. They've survived earthquakes, sandstorms, and centuries of shifting empires, their silent messages lingering just beyond our grasp. In a world where we map every inch of the planet with satellites, these ancient etchings remind us that some mysteries are grounded not in secrecy, but in perspective, waiting for us to see them from the right angle. For now, the desert keeps its secrets, and the lines remain a testament to human creativity's boundless, if inscrutable, potential. Hidden away in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, lies a piece of linen that has ignited faith, science, and skepticism in equal measure for over 6 centuries. The Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot-long cloth imprinted with the faint, haunting image of a crucified man, has been called both the most sacred relic in Christianity and one of history's most elaborate hoaxes. To believers, it's the very fabric that wrapped Jesus' body after his death, its mysterious image a divine imprint of his suffering. To skeptics, it's a medieval forgery crafted with techniques still not fully understood. But what makes this ancient textile so endlessly debated? The image itself is eerily precise. Viewed up close, the shroud reveals not just the outline of a man, but astonishing anatomical details: swollen wounds consistent with Roman flagellation, puncture marks matching a crown of thorns, and even what appears to be a spear wound in the side. Bloodstains align with gospel accounts of Christ's crucifixion, and pollen grains found on the cloth originate from plants native to Jerusalem. Most strikingly, the image isn't painted or dyed but appears to be a superficial discoloration of the linen fibers, as if created by some fleeting burst of energy. Modern researchers have tried recreating the effect using ultraviolet light, chemical reactions, even medieval pigments, but no method perfectly replicates the shroud's unique, 3-dimensional encoding. Then came the bombshell of carbon dating. In 1988, scientists at 3 prestigious labs tested small samples of the cloth, concluding it dated to between 1260 and 1390, squarely in the medieval period. Case closed, not quite. Critics quickly pointed out the tested samples might have been contaminated by centuries of handling, fire damage from a 1532 chapel blaze, or even invisible repairs by medieval nuns. More recent studies using alternative dating methods, like analyzing pollen or textile weaving patterns, suggest the shroud could indeed be far older, possibly from the 1st century. Some researchers even argue the carbon-dated patches came from a later edition, not the original shroud. The debate takes stranger turns when you examine the image's uncanny properties. In 1978, a team of scientists called the Shroud of Turin Research Project subjected the cloth to thousands of hours of testing. Their findings were baffling. The image behaves like a photographic negative when inverted. It reveals startling depth and clarity. No brushstrokes or pigments were detected, and the coloration penetrates only the topmost fibers, as if the image was projected onto the cloth rather than applied. Some physicists propose a short burst of radiation could explain it, while others suggest a natural chemical reaction between decomposing body oils and the linen. Perhaps the most poignant question isn't whether the shroud is authentic, but why its mystery endures. For millions, it's a tangible connection to the divine, a physical echo of resurrection. For scientists, it's a puzzle that defies easy solutions, a collision of faith and empirical evidence where neither side can claim total victory. The Shroud of Turin remains suspended between worlds, between history and legend, between skepticism and wonder. Whether it's a medieval masterpiece of deception or a relic of supernatural origin, one thing is certain. It challenges us to confront the limits of what we think we know, leaving us to grapple with the possibility that some truths transcend proof. The letters arrived like clockwork, taunting, cryptic, and dripping with malice. Between 1968 and 1969, the San Francisco Bay Area was gripped by fear as a serial killer calling himself the Zodiac murdered at least 5 victims, though he boasted of 37. But what made this case unlike any other wasn't just the brutality. It was the killer's obsession with games. After each attack, he sent chilling letters to local newspapers, filled with coded messages and macabre doodles, daring authorities to catch him. One cipher, mailed in 1969, contained a grid of symbols so complex it took a married pair of amateur cryptographers 51 years to crack, only to reveal another layer of the Zodiac's twisted narcissism. I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me. The decryption breakthrough in 2020, aided by painstaking work and modern algorithms, finally unveiled part of the killer's message. Yet even this victory felt hollow. The solved section contained no names, no locations, just the ramblings of a man reveling in his own notoriety. 3 other ciphers remain unsolved, including the infamous 340-character Zodiac Killer cipher, which the FBI once called the most complex code ever submitted to their cryptanalysis unit. What secrets might still lurk in those unbroken sequences? Some theorists believe they could hold the killer's identity, while others suspect they're nothing but red herrings designed to waste investigators' time. Suspects have come and gone over the decades. Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester and schoolteacher, was long considered the prime candidate. His handwriting bore similarities to the Zodiac's, and he owned a wristwatch matching one described in the killer's letters. Yet DNA evidence later excluded him. Then there's Ross Sullivan, a troubled library worker who resembled the police sketch and had eerie knowledge of one victim's movements. Or the lesser-known Lawrence Kane, a former Navy cryptographer with a violent past. Each theory carries tantalizing clues, yet none have delivered definitive proof. Perhaps most unsettling is how the Zodiac exploited media attention, crafting his own mythos with each letter. He designed a custom cipher symbol, a crosshair-like circle with intersecting lines, and signed his messages with it like a perverse brand. He mailed pieces of victims' clothing as trophies, even including a blood-stained square of fabric to prove his authenticity. And then, as suddenly as he appeared, the communication stopped. Did he die, get imprisoned for another crime, or simply grow bored of the game? The case remains open, a gaping wound in American true crime history. With each passing year, the likelihood of solving it dims, yet the lure of those uncracked ciphers endures. They're more than puzzles. They're the last whispers of a phantom who turned murder into a performance, leaving the audience forever waiting for a finale that may never come. The Zodiac didn't just take lives, he weaponized mystery itself, ensuring his shadow would linger long after the guns fell silent. And in that, at least, he succeeded beyond measure. For nearly 500 years, Norse settlers thrived in Greenland's harsh landscape, building stone churches, herding livestock, and trading walrus ivory with Europe. Then, in the 15th century, every last Viking vanished. When a ship finally reached the eastern settlement in 1540, crews found only empty houses, abandoned tools, and eerie silence. No graves, no battle signs, just a civilization swallowed by the Arctic winds. The lost colony of Greenland isn't just a disappearance, it's a riddle wrapped in ice where even the bones refuse to tell their story. Climate change looms large as the prime suspect. Tree ring data reveals the onset of the Little Ice Age, a centuries-long cold snap that would have shortened growing seasons, starved livestock, and frozen trade routes. Imagine Norse farmers watching their fields wither under unrelenting frost, their churches buried under encroaching glaciers, but Greenland's Inuit neighbors, the Thule people, adapted seamlessly, hunting seals and whales where the Norse clung to failing farms. Why couldn't these seasoned settlers do the same? The answer might lie in cultural stubbornness. Excavations show the Norse refused to adopt Inuit survival techniques, rejecting nutrient-rich marine diets in favor of dwindling crops. Their very identity as Europeans may have doomed them unwilling to become something new in a land that demanded change. Yet climate alone doesn't explain the absence of bodies or the orderly abandonment. Some historians propose mass migration to North America, pointing to mysterious Norse-style artifacts found as far south as Newfoundland. Could Greenland's settlers have sailed west, joining indigenous communities or founding short-lived outposts? Others point to raids by European pirates or conflicts with the Thule, though archaeological evidence is scant. A single clue haunts researchers: a woman's dress fashioned from squirrel fur, a creature native not to Greenland but to Scandinavia. Was this a final, desperate attempt to maintain a vanishing way of life? The darkest theory suggests a slow unraveling generations of isolation, malnutrition, and despair. Church records from Iceland mention a Greenlandic ship arriving around 1400. Its crew emaciated and raving about shadow people stalking their settlements. Whether these were hallucinations from scurvy or echoes of real violence, the truth died with them. By the time Danish missionaries arrived centuries later, even the Inuit oral traditions held only fragments of the Norse whispers of pale ghosts lingering in ruined stone walls. Greenland's lost colony stands as a warning from history. It's not just about a people who vanished, but about the fragility of human footholds in indifferent landscapes. The Norse didn't just battle the cold, they battled their own assumptions, their refusal to adapt sealing their fate long before the last fire went out. In the end, Greenland didn't reject them, it simply waited, patient as ice, for their pride to freeze solid. During World War II, in the summer of 1943, the U.S. Navy allegedly conducted an experiment so bizarre it sounds ripped from a science fiction novel. Witnesses claimed the USS Eldridge, a naval destroyer escort, vanished from the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in a flash of green light, only to reappear seconds later, some say miles away, with crew members fused to the ship's metal or driven irrevocably insane. This is the Philadelphia experiment, a legend that's fueled decades of conspiracy theories, government denials, and scientific debate. But how much of it is fact, and how much is the fog of war mixed with human imagination? The story first gained traction in the 1950s, thanks to a mysterious figure named Carl Allen, who wrote letters to astronomer Morris Jessup claiming to have witnessed the event. According to Allen, the Navy was testing Einstein's unified field theory, an attempt to bend light and electromagnetic fields to render objects invisible. But something went catastrophically wrong. Sailors reportedly phased in and out of existence, some bursting into flames, others found embedded in bulkheads. The few survivors allegedly suffered severe psychological trauma, with amnesia or violent outbursts so extreme they were institutionalized. Military records tell a different story. The USS Eldridge's logs show it wasn't even in Philadelphia at the time of the alleged experiment, but docked in New York and later deployed to the Mediterranean. Skeptics argue the tale might have originated from a real naval project called degaussing, a process that made ships magnetically invisible to enemy mines by wrapping them in electromagnetic coils. To an untrained observer, seeing a ship's magnetic signature vanish from radar could easily be misinterpreted as physical disappearance. Yet the legend persists, partly because of eerie coincidences. Former crew members of the Eldridge reported unusual health issues later in life, and declassified documents reveal the Navy was indeed researching radar invisibility and electromagnetic fields during the war. Some theorists believe the experiment was part of a broader, clandestine program exploring technologies far ahead of their time, with the Philadelphia incident either covered up or exaggerated to discredit leaks. Others point to the tragic case of the USS Eldridge's actual crew, many of whom suffered premature deaths, fueling speculation about radiation exposure or other unseen consequences. Scientists weigh in with cautious curiosity. While teleportation remains firmly in the realm of fiction, modern quantum physics does explore the concept of entanglement, where particles can theoretically influence each other instantaneously across vast distances. Could wartime researchers have stumbled upon a crude, dangerous application of such principles? Or is the Philadelphia experiment simply a cautionary tale about how fear, secrecy, and rumor can warp history into myth? One thing's certain, the story taps into something primal. It's a reminder of the terrifying unknowns lurking at the edges of cutting-edge science, especially in times of war. Whether a misunderstood military operation, an elaborate hoax, or something far stranger, the legend endures because it asks a question we're still grappling with today. Just how far will humanity go in pursuit of the impossible, and at what cost? The USS Eldridge was eventually sold to Greece and scrapped in the 90s, but its ghost lingers in conspiracy lore. Perhaps the real experiment wasn't in physics at all, but in psychology, how easily a single unverified account can rewrite history, leaving us to wonder what other secrets might be hiding in plain sight. Deep in the woods of Nova Scotia, a small island has lured fortune hunters to their ruin for over 200 years with the promise of unfathomable wealth and a curse that seems to punish those who dare seek it. Oak Island's infamous money pit was first discovered in 1795 when local teenager Daniel Maginnis stumbled upon a strange, circular depression in the ground. Above it hung an old ship's pulley from a sawed-off oak branch, a clue so theatrical it felt like a pirate's taunt. Digging deeper, Maginnis and his friends uncovered layers of logs spaced exactly 10 feet apart, then a slab inscribed with cryptic symbols. But at 90 feet, their shovels struck something far more ominous. Seawater began flooding the shaft with terrifying speed, as if the pit itself were fighting back. Thus began the world's longest-running treasure hunt, one that's claimed 6 lives, swallowed millions of dollars, and birthed theories wilder than any Hollywood script. The engineering behind the money pit defies easy explanation. Early excavators found layers of charcoal, coconut fiber, a material foreign to Canada, and putty-like cement, sealing off chambers, evidence of deliberate, sophisticated construction. As diggers ventured deeper, they triggered a series of fiendish traps. Tunnels connected to nearby Smith's Cove flooded the pit with seawater, while wooden platforms collapsed under the weight of treasure hunters. Modern sonar scans reveal a vast spiderweb-like network of shafts and chambers, some extending over 200 feet down. Who would go to such lengths to hide something? And what could possibly justify such an elaborate defense system? Theories spiral from the plausible to the fantastical. Some argue the pit holds the lost treasures of Captain Kidd or Blackbeard, pirates who allegedly frequented Nova Scotia's waters. Others whisper of Marie Antoinette's missing jewels, smuggled out of revolutionary France by loyalists, but the most tantalizing hypothesis links Oak Island to the Knights Templar. Medieval records suggest the Templars fled Europe with religious artifacts, perhaps even the Holy Grail, after their persecution in the 14th century. Could they have crossed the Atlantic centuries before Columbus, burying their sacred relics in this remote corner of the New World? Proponents point to the inscribed stone slab, which some claim bears Templar symbols, and the island's strange alignment with constellations significant to the order. Yet for all the speculation, the pit guards its secrets fiercely. The curse of Oak Island is as much about human obsession as it is about gold. The Lagina brothers, stars of the history channels The Curse of Oak Island, have spent over a decade drilling, diving, and decoding only to uncover tantalizing fragments. a 17th-century Spanish coin, a shred of parchment, a Roman-era sword. Each discovery fans the flames of hope, but the pit's true nature remains elusive. Even advanced technology, ground-penetrating radar, underwater cameras, has failed to deliver a definitive answer. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't what lies at the bottom of the money pit, but why generation after generation refuses to give up the search. Is it greed, historical fascination, or something deeper, a primal drive to solve the unsolvable? Oak Island mocks our modern arrogance, proving that even in an age of satellites and supercomputers, some riddles remain buried beyond reach. Every shovel of dirt turned, every tunnel collapsed, whispers the same maddening question: what price are we willing to pay for a secret that might not even exist? The snow had barely begun to melt that March evening in 1922 when the Gruber family settled into their remote Bavarian farmhouse, unaware they were sharing their home with something far darker than the winter chill. By dawn, all 6 inhabitants of Hinterkaifeck lay dead, bludgeoned with a mattock, their bodies stacked like firewood in the barn. But the horror wasn't just in the brutality, it was in the signs that the killer had lingered. Days before the murders, the family's maid quit without notice, trembling as she confessed she'd heard footsteps in the attic and found unfamiliar newspapers on the kitchen table. The new maid arrived just in time to join the victims. Whoever slaughtered the Grubers knew the farm intimately. Fresh footprints led to the house, but none away, as if the murderer had simply vanished into the walls. The family's keys went missing weeks prior, suggesting someone had been studying their routines. Most chilling, after the killings, neighbors reported smoke curling from the chimney for days, as though the killer stayed to warm themselves by the hearth, living among the dead. Police initially suspected the father, Andreas Gruber, given rumors of his abusive behavior and the fact his skull was crushed more viciously than the others. But how would that explain the 6-month-old baby, also murdered, or the eerie prelude of stolen keys and phantom footsteps? Other theories point to a mentally unstable neighbor seen near the farm, or a scorned lover of the family's daughter, Victoria. Then there's the unsettling connection to World War I, a veteran with a grudge, perhaps, or someone who'd grown accustomed to violence in the trenches. Modern forensic techniques have only deepened the mystery. In 2007, investigators exhumed the bodies, hoping for DNA evidence. Instead, they found the victims' skulls had been swapped during earlier examinations, rendering the effort useless. The case files themselves were destroyed in a 1960s flood, leaving only whispers and speculation. Hinterkaifeck's horror lingers not just in its violence but in its intimacy. This wasn't a random attack, it was a slow, calculated possession of a home, a family picked off one by one while something watched from the shadows. The farm was razed to the ground after the murders, yet the questions remain as fresh as those footprints in the snow. Who lived among the Grubers before killing them? And what unspeakable satisfaction did they find in staying long after the screams fell silent? Some mysteries aren't just unsolved, they're waiting. In the summer of 1997, hydrophones deployed across the Pacific Ocean by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration picked up something unnatural. A sound so powerful it reverberated across 3,000 miles of open water, pulsing for over a minute with a frequency that made scientists' blood run cold. They called it the bloop, an ultra-low frequency noise that defied easy explanation, oscillating between a groan and a roar like something alive. At first, researchers assumed it was mechanical, perhaps a submarine or some underwater drilling operation. But when they analyzed the waveform, the truth became far stranger. The sound's acoustic profile matched the vocalizations of living organisms. The problem: to produce a noise that loud, the creature responsible would have to dwarf even the blue whale, the largest known animal in Earth's history. The bloop's origins sparked instant controversy. Some oceanographers argued it was the sound of massive icebergs fracturing, a phenomenon known as icequakes. These glacial events can produce low-frequency rumbles powerful enough to travel thousands of miles through water, and the bloop's epicenter near the remote South Pacific did align with regions of intense ice activity. Yet skeptics pointed out key inconsistencies. Icequake signatures typically spike sharply and decay, while the bloop's undulating rise and fall bore an eerie resemblance to biological communication. The timing was peculiar too. The sound occurred during a period of relative seismic quiet, with no corresponding ice-calving events detected by satellites. Then came the whispers of something deeper. The bloop's point of origin sat uncomfortably close to the coordinates HP Lovecraft once assigned to Arlaye, the sunken city of his fictional cosmic horror Cthulhu. While no serious scientist entertained the idea of ancient gods stirring beneath the waves, the coincidence fueled wild speculation about undiscovered megafauna lurking in the ocean's uncharted trenches. Could an elusive species, a gargantuan squid or an undiscovered whale variant, have produced such a sound? Marine biologists noted that even known whales, like the fin or sperm species, produce calls far beyond human hearing ranges, sometimes spanning hundreds of miles to communicate. But the bloop dwarfed these recordings in both volume and duration, leaving experts grasping for analogies. NOAA officially closed the case in 2012, attributing the bloop to icequakes after all. But the debate never truly died. Independent researchers later identified similar, if quieter, bloop-like sounds in other ocean basins, events that didn't always correspond to known ice movements. Some theorists now suggest these noises could stem from methane vents erupting from the seafloor, or even shifts in underwater volcanic activity. Yet none of these explanations fully account for the original bloop's uncanny biological cadence, its almost rhythmic pulsation that still echoes in the archives as a tantalizing outlier. What makes the bloop endure isn't just the mystery of its source, but what it represents: a reminder that even in our age of satellite mapping and robotic submersibles, the ocean remains the planet's last great frontier. It's a place where sounds travel farther than light, where pressure crushes steel like tinfoil, and where creatures we've never seen might still lurk in the crushing dark. The bloop could have been ice, it could have been flesh, or it could have been something else entirely, a phenomenon we don't yet have the language to describe. Until another signal pierces the depths, we're left listening, wondering what other voices might be calling from the abyss. It's not often you hear about a military force being outmaneuvered by birds, let alone birds that can't fly. But in 1932, Australia found itself locked in a battle so humiliating, it's gone down in history as the Great Emu War. Picture this: thousands of emus, gangly, 6-foot-tall flightless birds with legs built for sprinting and a knack for chaos, descending on Western Australia's farmlands like feathery wrecking balls. Crops were trampled, fences demolished, and water supplies ravaged. Desperate farmers begged the government for help, and in a move that would soon become a masterclass in absurdity, the Australian Army deployed 2 soldiers with machine guns to solve the problem. What followed wasn't just a failure, it was a farce. The operation began with confidence. Armed with Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, the soldiers set out to cull the emu population. But no one accounted for the birds' guerrilla tactics. Emus don't just run, they scatter in unpredictable zigzags, splitting into smaller groups that vanish into the bush like feathered ninjas. The soldiers' first encounter was a disaster. They opened fire on a flock of 50, only to watch in dismay as the emus dodged bullets with eerie precision. By the end of the day, the military had expended thousands of rounds for a measly dozen kills. One soldier described the experience as trying to shoot a flock of velociraptors with ADHD. After 6 days of humiliation, the troops withdrew. The emus, it seemed, had won. But why were these birds so unstoppable? The truth lies in ecology, not in competence. The emu invasion was a man-made disaster. World War I veterans had been given land to farm in Western Australia, but the arid soil was barely arable. When the Great Depression hit, wheat prices collapsed, leaving farmers struggling to feed themselves, let alone pay for emu-proof fencing. Meanwhile, a series of wet seasons had swelled the emu population, and when drought returned, the birds marched on farmlands in search of food and water. The military's intervention was doomed from the start, not because the soldiers were unskilled, but because the emus were fighting for survival. The media had a field day. Newspapers mocked the campaign, calling it the Feathered Blitzkrieg, and joking that the emus should be awarded medals for their tactical brilliance. Politicians, red-faced, defended the operation as a necessary measure, but the public wasn't buying it. The Great Emu War became a symbol of bureaucratic absurdity, a cautionary tale about humanity's hubris in the face of nature's resilience. Farmers eventually resorted to simpler solutions, bounty systems and reinforced fences. The emus, of course, carried on as they always had, unstoppable, untamable, and utterly indifferent to humanity's attempts to control them. What makes this story so enduring isn't just its comedy, it's the uncomfortable truth it reveals. The emus weren't invaders, they were adapters, thriving in a landscape humans had destabilized. The real enemy wasn't the birds, but the short-sighted policies that pitted soldiers against wildlife in the first place. Today, the Great Emu War is remembered less as a military blunder and more as a wink from history, reminding us that sometimes the most absurd conflicts are the ones we bring upon ourselves. And as for the emus, they're still out there, lurking in the outback, waiting for the next chance to remind us who really rules the land down under. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica, scattered across riverbanks and half buried in the earth, lie hundreds of stone spheres so perfectly round they seem carved by divine hands, or perhaps something even stranger. Known as the Dickwee stones, these enigmatic orbs range from the size of a bowling ball to massive boulders measuring over 6 feet in diameter and weighing up to 16 tons. Their surfaces are unnervingly smooth, their symmetry precise enough to rival modern machining. But here's what truly defies explanation. They were crafted over 1,000 years ago by a pre-Columbian civilization with no known metal tools, no written language, and no wheel. Archaeologists trace the spheres to the Dickwee culture, which flourished between 700 and 1500 CE. The stones were painstakingly shaped from gabbro, a volcanic rock, using smaller stones as hammers and grinders, a process that would have taken generations of patient labor. But why? Some researchers believe the spheres held astronomical significance, aligned with celestial events or arranged to mirror constellations. Others argue they marked territorial boundaries or sacred spaces, acting as silent sentinels for ceremonial sites. The most compelling theory suggests they were status symbols for powerful chiefs, their size and perfection reflecting the ruler's influence. Imagine a village competing to carve ever larger spheres, each one a testament to human ingenuity and communal effort. Yet the mystery deepens when you consider their distribution. Many spheres were found clustered in groups, some arranged in geometric patterns, straight lines, triangles, even parabolas, as if mapping unseen energies or forgotten rituals. When American fruit companies cleared land for banana plantations in the 1930s, bulldozers unearthed dozens more, often haphazardly relocated by later generations. This careless displacement erased critical context, leaving modern scholars to piece together fragments of a puzzle with half the clues missing. Then there are the whispers of something older. A handful of spheres bear scars unlike natural erosion-precise grooves or indentations that hint at advanced knowledge of geometry or even mechanical use. Could they have been part of a larger, lost technology? Fringe theorists point to legends of the Atlanteans or even extraterrestrial visitors, though mainstream archaeology dismisses these claims. More plausible is the idea that the Dickwee culture inherited or traded knowledge from neighboring Mesoamerican societies, adapting techniques we've yet to fully understand. What's haunting isn't just the stones themselves, but the silence surrounding them. The Dickwys left no carvings, no text, no oral histories to explain their purpose. By the time Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, the civilization had already faded into obscurity, taking their secrets with them. Today, the spheres stand as mute witnesses to a sophistication we can only guess at, a reminder that perfection isn't always a product of modernity. Sometimes it's a message in stone, waiting centuries for us to decipher its meaning. In the end, the Dickwy stones challenge our assumptions about ancient societies. They weren't primitive, they were precise, not random but intentional. And perhaps that's their greatest lesson. The past doesn't always reveal its secrets in words. Sometimes it speaks in geometry, in patience, in the quiet defiance of erosion and time. The spheres remain, as they always have, smooth, silent, and utterly inscrutable. On a quiet December morning in 1948, beachgoers in Adelaide, Australia, stumbled upon a chilling sight: a well-dressed man lying motionless on Somerton Beach, his head resting against the seawall as if he'd simply paused to nap. But this was no sleeping sunbather. The man showed no signs of violence, yet he was undeniably dead. What began as a routine coroner's case soon spiraled into one of history's most perplexing unsolved mysteries: the Tamam Shud case, a riddle wrapped in coded messages, Cold War intrigue, and a corpse without a name. The victim carried no identification, no wallet, no labels in his clothing, not even dental records matching local files. His pockets held nothing but chewing gum, a bus ticket, and a scrap of paper torn from a rare book of Persian poetry. The phrase scribbled on it, Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished in Persian, sent investigators down a rabbit hole. The scrap matched a page ripped from a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam found abandoned in a nearby car. Inside the book's back cover, detectives uncovered something even stranger: 5 lines of apparent code, a string of capital letters that looked like no known cipher. Beneath them, scrawled in faint pencil, was an unlisted phone number belonging to a local nurse. The nurse claimed she'd never met the dead man, but witnesses swore they'd seen them together. Even more peculiar, she later admitted giving a copy of the Rubaiyat to a former lover. A man who'd mysteriously vanished around the same time. Was the Somerton man a jilted suitor? A spy caught in a web of post-war espionage, the timing fueled speculation. 1948 was the dawn of the Cold War, and Australia had become a hotbed of intelligence activity. Some researchers believe the code matches Soviet-era spycraft techniques, perhaps a one-time pad used by undercover operatives. Others argue the victim's unusually developed calf muscles, like those of a ballet dancer, point to a European background, possibly linking him to displaced persons networks after World War II. Despite decades of investigation, both the code and the man's identity remain stubbornly opaque. Modern cryptographers armed with supercomputers have failed to crack the cipher, while DNA evidence has yielded only dead ends. Even the exhumation of the body in 2021, promising breakthroughs with advanced genetic genealogy, left more questions than answers. The Somerton man's grave still bears the haunting epitaph: "Here lies the unknown man." What makes this case endure isn't just the unanswered questions, it's the unsettling details. The victim's ears had a distinctive shape found in only 1 to 2% of the population. His teeth showed signs of expensive dental work, yet no dentist recognized him. And then there's the eerie coincidence of the nurse's own fate. Years later, she died under unexplained circumstances, her body found in the same eerily composed pose as the Somerton man. Was this a tragic love story, an espionage casualty, or something even darker? The Tamam Shud case refuses to fade into history's footnotes. It lingers like the last line of that Persian poem, a whisper of finality with no resolution, a mystery that insists against all odds on remaining unfinished. The coastline of the Salish Sea holds a macabre secret, one that has baffled investigators and chilled beachcombers for over a decade. Since 2007, more than 20 human feet, still clad in sneakers or hiking boots, have washed ashore along the shores of British Columbia and Washington state. Each discovery follows the same eerie pattern: a shoe bobbing in the tide, its laces still tied, only to reveal a skeletal foot severed cleanly at the ankle. No bodies, no traces of violence, just feet arriving like grim messages in bottles from the deep. At first glance, the explanation seems obvious. The Pacific Northwest's waters are notorious for strong currents and hidden undertows, perfect for disarticulating remains over time. Medical examiners confirmed many of the feet belonged to individuals who drowned accidentally or died by suicide, their bodies broken apart by waves and scavengers. The buoyancy of modern sneakers, designed with lightweight foams and air pockets, would explain why these particular limbs surfaced while the rest sank. Case closed, not quite. The sheer consistency of the discoveries raises unsettling questions. Why only feet? Why predominantly right feet initially before left ones began appearing years later? And why do some shoes date back decades, their rubber soles barely degraded despite years underwater? One victim's sneaker traced back to a man who vanished in 1987, 20 years before the first foot washed ashore. What kept it preserved all that time? Some theories point to the region's unique oceanography. The Salish Sea's cold, low oxygen depths might slow decomposition, while its swirling currents act like a conveyor belt, depositing artifacts at predictable intervals. Yet darker possibilities linger. In 2012, a foot was linked through DNA to a man whose disappearance was tied to a known criminal organization. Another matched a woman last seen fleeing an abusive partner. Could some of these cases be deliberate disposals, with the sea unwittingly delivering evidence of foul play? The absence of trauma on the bones complicates matters. No saw marks, no bullet holes, just the clean work of nature, or someone who knew how to mimic it. The cultural impact of these finds has been just as gripping as the forensic puzzle. Locals dubbed it the sneaker wave syndrome, blending dark humor with genuine unease. Conspiracy forums lit up with tales of serial killers targeting feet, while oceanographers published studies on the biomechanics of floating limbs. The phenomenon even birthed a hauntingly practical innovation. British Columbia's coroner now maintains a DNA database specifically for unidentified feet, ensuring future discoveries can be matched to missing persons. What makes the Salish Sea feet so haunting isn't just the mystery of their origin, it's the way they force us to confront the ocean's role as both keeper and revealer of secrets. These aren't just anatomical curiosities, they're fragments of stories abruptly cut short, carried back to shore by tides that refuse to let them stay buried. Whether tragic accidents or silent witnesses to violence, each foot represents a life interrupted, a question mark etched in bone and rubber. And as long as the sea keeps giving them up, we'll keep searching for the rest of the story. The sun hadn't yet risen on January 15, 1947, when a mother pushing her stroller through a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood spotted what she thought was a discarded mannequin lying in the grass. But this was no prop from a Hollywood backlot. The body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, soon to be infamous as the Black Dahlia, had been severed cleanly at the waist, drained of blood, and posed with her arms raised above her head like a macabre ballet dancer. Her face bore the grotesque hallmark of the killer, a Glasgow smile, a razor-cut grin stretching ear to ear. The brutality was calculated, almost surgical. And the press frenzy that followed would turn a tragic murder into one of America's most haunting unsolved crimes. What made the Black Dahlia case so chilling wasn't just the savagery, it was the killer's meticulous staging. Short's body had been washed, her wounds meticulously arranged to maximize shock value. Investigators found no blood at the scene, suggesting she'd been killed elsewhere, then transported like a twisted work of art. The media seized on her nickname, borrowed from a noir film, and sensationalized her life, painting her as a Hollywood hopeful tangled in the city's underworld. But the truth about Elizabeth was far more ordinary, a vulnerable young woman who drifted between odd jobs and temporary homes, her dreams of stardom never more than a faint glimmer. The investigation quickly unraveled into chaos. Over 50 people falsely confessed, some with disturbingly accurate details only the killer could know. The LAPD, overwhelmed by the publicity, pursued red herrings from jealous boyfriends to underground abortionists. One suspect, Dr. George Hodel, later became the prime focus when his own son, a homicide detective, uncovered cryptic diary entries and eerie connections to the murder's forensic details. Hodel's home even contained surgical tools matching the precision of Short's injuries, but with no definitive proof, the case stalled, leaving detectives to grapple with a killer who might have walked among them, hidden in plain sight. Conspiracy theories flourished like weeds in the absence of answers. Some claimed Short had crossed paths with a powerful figure, maybe a studio executive or politician, whose influence shielded them from justice. Others pointed to Cleveland's unsolved torso murders of the 1930s, noting the eerie similarities in dismemberment and posing. Then there were the whispers of darker forces, occult rituals, blackmail gone wrong, or even a prototype for the Zodiac Killer's later theatrics. The most haunting theory suggests the killer wasn't just a murderer but an artist, crafting their horror show for an audience of one themselves. 75 years later, the Black Dahlia's ghost lingers in Hollywood's shadows. Forensic advances have re-examined evidence from fingerprint lifts to soil samples, but the case remains colder than the January morning her body was found. What endures isn't just the mystery, it's the way Elizabeth Short's story reflects the city's dual nature. Los Angeles chewed her up and spit her out, then turned her tragedy into a spectacle. The killer didn't just take her life, they sentenced her to eternity as a cautionary tale, a footnote in true crime lore. And somewhere, in some forgotten file or unmarked grave, the truth waits not for justice, but for the satisfaction of knowing it got away with the perfect crime. That mysterious burst of radio waves from the constellation Sagittarius has haunted astronomers for decades, an interstellar shout that lasted just 72 seconds, then vanished into silence. But with advances in technology and a flood of new astronomical discoveries since 1977, does the WOW signal still stand as our best candidate for alien contact, or has time chipped away at its intrigue? Modern telescopes have mapped the sky with precision unimaginable in the 70s, yet that patch of space near the star Chi Sagittarii remains stubbornly quiet. No repeating signals, no matching frequencies, just that one tantalizing blip. So was it a cosmic accident or a deliberate beacon meant only for that fleeting moment? Fresh analysis reveals chilling details. The signal's intensity followed a perfect curve as it passed through the Big Ear telescope's field of view, exactly as expected for a distant source. Even more compelling, its narrowband frequency of 1420 MHz sits squarely in the water hole, a range scientists consider ideal for interstellar communication because it's naturally quiet, nestled between the emissions of hydrogen and hydroxyl molecules. Coincidence unlikely. Natural cosmic phenomena like pulsars or quasars typically broadcast across a wide spectrum, not this razor-sharp frequency. And then there's the location. Sagittarius is dense with sun-like stars, prime real estate for potential civilizations. But skeptics have new ammunition. Some argue the signal could have been a reflected human transmission, bouncing off space debris or a passing satellite. Others point to comets. Two undiscovered icy bodies, now identified, were cruising through that region in 1977. Could hydrogen clouds around them have amplified a natural radio burst? Problematically, those comets weren't precisely aligned with the signal's origin, and their emissions wouldn't explain the frequency's unnatural purity. The most haunting possibility, the wow signal wasn't meant for us at all. Imagine a directed beacon sweeping through the galaxy like a lighthouse beam, briefly grazing Earth before moving on. Or worse, a distress call from a dying civilization, their final message now lost in the void. With projects like Breakthrough, listen scanning millions of frequencies daily, the silence that follows only deepens the ache. Maybe the universe isn't teeming with voices, or maybe we just happen to eavesdrop on the wrong millisecond of cosmic time. For now, the wow signal remains a Rorschach test for our hopes and fears. It's either proof we're not alone or a lesson in how desperately we want to believe. Either way, that 72-second whisper from the dark continues to echo, unresolved, in the halls of science and the human imagination. From vanishing colonies to eerie signals from the stars, these 25 unsolved events remind us that history isn't just a record of what we know. It's a testament to the mysteries we've yet to unravel. Each of these enigmas, whether born from human ambition, natural phenomena, or something far more elusive, shares a common thread. They challenge our certainty about the past and force us to confront the limits of our understanding. Consider the sheer variety of these puzzles. Some, like the Antikythera Mechanism or the Baghdad Battery, hint at lost technologies that seem impossibly advanced for their time. Others, like the Dyatlov Pass incident or the Hinterkaifeck murders, are steeped in chilling ambiguity where the evidence only deepens the dread. Then there are the cosmic riddles, the wow signal, the bloop reminders that even in an age of satellites and deep-sea submersibles, our planet and the universe beyond still hold whispers we can't quite decipher. What makes these stories endure isn't just their strangeness, it's the way they mirror our own curiosity. They're invitations to wonder, to speculate, and sometimes to admit that we might never know the full truth. And that's okay, because the pursuit of answers, however elusive, is what keeps history alive. It's why we still debate Roanoke's fate, why we scan the stars for signals, and why a handful of cryptic symbols carved into a wooden post or scribbled in a killer's letter can captivate generations. These mysteries also reveal something deeper about us. They show how cultures across time have grappled with the unexplainable, whether blaming gods, spirits, or rogue scientists, and how our tools for investigation have evolved. Where once we might have seen omens in the sky, we now deploy carbon dating and spectral analysis. Yet some puzzles resist even our most advanced methods, humbling us with their persistence. So which of these 25 events lingers in your mind? Was it the haunting precision of the Nazca lines, the grotesque spectacle of the dancing plague, or the quiet terror of the Somerton man's unsolved code? Drop your favorite in the comments. We'd love to hear which mysteries keep you up at night. And if this deep dive into history's shadows left you craving more, don't forget to subscribe. From lost civilizations to modern enigmas, there's always another layer of the past waiting to be uncovered. After all, the next great historical revelation might be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to ask the right question. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes the most fascinating stories are the ones without